There are increasing threats to Jamaica's biological resources, like our plants or animals, due to events like habitat degradation or pollution. And globally, cycles like animal poaching to fuel a thriving fashion industry continues to hover over the idea of sustainable life in the wild. While Jamaica and the rest of the world's ecological challenges of today need innovative solutions, understanding our wildlife, what to protect, the need to protect it, and those mobilized to protect it is one of the biggest starts.
The overall goal for wildlife conservation is really to try and preserve a particular species in its natural environment. So the species that are protected, how do we determine those? Well, Jamaica, again, as an island, has a lot of unique species. So that's one of the first things we look at. What are the things that are unique to Jamaica? What are the things that are endemic? So we're looking at endemic species, not just animals, but also plants. And we are trying to see how we can ensure that we don't lose those species. There are also species whose numbers are very small. They're not necessarily endemic. Some of them are more widespread, but their species in Jamaica are very small and they may have a higher threat of exploitation. For example, persons are going to try and harvest them, and so we try to put some form of control onto the amount of harvest that is done. So in order to do that, we have to bring those species under the Wildlife Protection Act so we can better regulate these activities.
So how do we necessarily choose which animals fall under the country's Wildlife Protection Act?
Now, how do we choose these? Well, we look at what is native, what is endemic, and then we actually do surveys. We look at what the population numbers are like. We also signatory to several international treaties that actually tell us that certain species that we have on our island are actually endangered, critically endangered on a global scale. And so we have to play our part here in Jamaica to ensure that those species are not lost.
And then there is the issue of domesticated animals, those that are dependent on humans, because over time they have become genetically adopted to live alongside us. But more and more persons are stepping into the wild for new breeds to domesticate. But disturbing that pattern can have implications.
Domesticated animals are really animals that are very dependent on man and very used to habitualize to man. And so we talk about cats and dogs, some pigeons, for example, your rock pigeons, your everyday domestic pigeons. Those are domestic animals. Now, some of our wildlife persons would like to keep as pet. They are not domesticated animals. They are actually wild animals. Our parrots, for example, we have two endemic species of parrot, the yellow-billed parrot and the black-billed parrot, and persons would tend to want to keep those as pet. And they are actually protected because their population is low. First off, they're endemic. Their population is very low, and their population is also declining. And so we're trying to protect those species.
From around August to somewhere in September, our bird shooting season is a welcome activity. But even these licensed activities, the National Environment and Planning Agency NEPA is regulating how we protect our endemic species in the wild.
We have hunting season, that is something that is actually regulated. NEPA also declares what are known as game reserves. And game reserves are areas where we do not want any hunting activity to occur. Because annually we have annual game bird hunting season, and so we have game reserves to protect populations, especially breeding populations of these birds, so that they are not overexploited. So game reserves are areas where no one is allowed to hunt, and we actually created a law in such a way that all forest reserves that are managed by Forestry Department are actually, in effect, game reserves as well. So in that sense, NEPA does have a role in forest reserves in ensuring that no hunting occurs within forest reserves.
So, next time you roam our rugged landscape, or pass by the carpet of plants lining the roadways, the thick tangles of bushes, or observe the colony of birds or seemingly baleful mongoose, let's observe without disturbing those patterns of life.